Hey guys, I just wanted to pop on really quickly and do a real quick intro to this video because I don't normally publish my interviews that I do with other modern homesteaders for my magazine, Modern Homesteading Magazine. I don't normally publish the video versions of those interviews, but this interview was really special. So I am sitting down and speaking with Justin Rhodes, who you may know from his very popular YouTube channel, or from his documentaries, or his show Rooted, or his network Abundance Plus, or from the Homesteaders of America conference, or from many other places in the modern homesteading world. Justin Rhodes is a well-known name, and I got the opportunity to sit down and speak with him for this month's issue of Modern Homesteading Magazine, which was all about permaculture. And Justin runs a 75-acre permaculture homestead in North Carolina, so he was the perfect person to sit down and talk to about this topic, but he had so much good information to share that I really wanted to just put this out there to the world. So I do encourage you to get the print interview as well, because that has the full interview as well as photos showcasing Justin, his family, his homesteads. You can get a sneak peek into their life on their homestead and what that looks like. And also, if you get the permaculture issue, then that is also going to give you access to the feature article on permaculture, which that's where we break down the 12 principles of permaculture and the 5 zones, and we break them down in really practical terms so that you can actually take those principles and apply them to your homestead and to your life so that you can make your homestead run more efficiently and be more productive with less work on your part overall. And who doesn't want that, right? Of course, in each issue, we also include some exclusive recipes, and you'll also get the letter from the editor, which is me. So if you are watching this during the month of July 2021, while the permaculture issue is live, you can go and subscribe for free and read the permaculture issue. And you can do that at thehouseandhomestead.com/magazine. So www.thehouseandhomestead.com/magazine. You can sign up and become a subscriber for free there and get access to the current issue, which you can read while it is live, and then you'll have access to future issues as well to read. However, if you are watching this and it is no longer July 2021 and you still want to get this issue, or you're watching it at any time and you want to get full access to this issue and to all of our other past issues, and so full access means you get to download them, print them, save them, do whatever you like with them. You'll have access to not just this issue, but all past issues, our entire library of past issues, current issues, and future issues. You can do that at www.thehouseandhomestead.com/magazine-membership and become a member there to get full access to our library. And I mean, we have covered all sorts of topics related to modern homesteading. We have covered organic gardening, fall gardening, sourdough bread, raising livestock, home dairy, canning, raising backyard chickens, herbal medicine, aromatherapy. We've got a fermentation issue coming up, and so many more. So once again, to get access to our entire library of issues, including this issue on permaculture with this interview with Mr. Justin Rhodes, you can go to thehouseandhomestead.com/magazine-membership. All right, without further ado, here is the man of the hour himself, Justin Rhodes.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking time out of your, I'm sure, very busy day to sit down with me for a few minutes and chat.
For sure. For sure.
For anybody who doesn't know you or hasn't stumbled across some of your videos before, can you just kind of share in your own words who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Justin Rhodes, my wife, Rebecca Rhodes, live in Western North Carolina, United States, on 75 acres, and out of health conviction and concerns, we started growing our own food about 15 years ago. And now we grow most of our own food, practically all our own meat, and a lot of our own veggies in the season. And we were so excited about that we're so passionate about it. It had to become our career. We had to share what we were doing. So we started YouTubing our adventures and building a business surrounding that. And it's jived really well with folks. And we've now taught and inspired millions of people to grow their own food in a really nice, makes sense, sustainable, earth-friendly permaculture way.
So you're on 75 acres. You
Yeah.
homestead on about 8 acres of that, right?
Yep.
So how long have you actually been on that property? And how it's like you didn't always homestead, right? So when was it that you actually got into this?
Uh, Grandpa did. And I would say grandpa bought the land. Then my dad continued to farm on this land. So grandpa's sustenance farmed on this. My dad did a bit. They all hand milkers, and then me. So 3 generations on this farm. So nearly 100 years because it was bought in 1932.
Wow. So you are a third generation farmer then. So were you
Yep.
always you grew up this way? You're kind of used to this lifestyle?
No, what's interesting is because I mean, when my dad was growing up in this area, if you didn't grow it, you didn't eat. There was no government assistance. There was just, uh, there's not this grocery store. You had to grow it, and it became easier to get food and go out and have a job. And my dad ended up becoming a salesman, and he really forsook the farm. The only thing he continued was the cows. And I really think it was more for tax write off, maybe some nostalgia.
Right.
So I grew up around cows. I mean, I knew what an electric fence was. I knew how to ground down an electric fence and knew some of that verbiage. I knew how to herd a cow, but it wasn't permaculture. It was just let the cows go out in the field, feed them some hay in the winter, and it was very hands off. But so I had no experience then going into this. I had to learn it all from scratch, and even had to butt heads with my dad because I early on found folks like Joel Salatin in learning how to farm animals. So I'm moving animals every day. If nobody's familiar with Joel Salatin, I'm moving those animals every day, and that's not that kind of threatened how my dad had did it. So not only did I not know how to do any of this stuff, and I learned it all from the books. This was like before YouTube, because
Right.
this is 15 years ago. So I
Yeah.
had to go off books and without support from my dad. And I'm sure many of your readers can understand and relate to. You pick up on this, you start this, whether your parents have experience in farming or not, they're going to think you're nuts.
Yeah.
And so we did have to face that. We did have to kind of set on our own. It's not like, what grandpa did was more in line with permaculture. It would have been, sure, they would have had some row crops, but they also have a family cow, and they also had pigs to feed the skim milk from that family cow to, and all their food scraps. And so those systems were working together. What
Mhm.
they did not know they were doing permaculture.
Right.
But when the homesteads were on that smaller level, they inevitably did it because they had all this diversity, and they found ways for these different things to work and complement each other.
I think a lot of people have heard this term permaculture, but they maybe don't understand exactly what it means or how to implement it. So, can you explain, and again in your own words, what permaculture is and what the difference is between kind of just your standard homestead and a permaculture homestead?
Yeah, so I guess the difference between a permaculture homestead and a homestead, that's a good, I mean, yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, the permaculture homestead is thinking about, so permaculture would have, it's a way of designing things that works with nature rather than against it. I would also think you could really sum up permaculture by the idea that permaculture makes connections, then designs around that.
Right.
So, for
Okay.
example, permaculture will say, "Oh, if you want to have chickens, that's what do you want? You want chickens and you want a garden, for example."
Right.
Okay, in regular standard homesteading, the person will maybe have a garden over here, and there'll be a garden, and they'll learn about gardening and do this and that. But then they'll have the chickens over here, and
Mhm.
they're learning about chickens, and they're improving, and they're not working together. They're two different things.
Right.
But what permaculture will do is it'll take your chicken operation and your garden operation, and it'll put them together in a toolbox. And permaculture becomes that toolbox. And what permaculture has done is looked at chickens and says, what does a chicken give? What does a chicken need? Okay, a chicken gives manure, a chicken scratches, a chicken needs water, it needs food. What does a garden give and need? A garden needs sunshine, it needs tilling, it needs weeding, it needs debugging. What does a garden give? Garden gives food. You see what's happening here? If a chicken needs food and a garden gives that, how then can those work together?
Mhm.
Well, one, you can just uh, in your design put them close together. Put the chickens in the garden right next to each other, and so and then the chicken, because it tills. That's one of the things it gives. Well, you could put the chickens in an area that you want to garden and let them till and debug, and then move them out and plant the garden there.
Right.
Okay. Classic example is in my front yard, high intensity. I have, if I'm walking out my door, there's my raised bed gardens that you would, come out and pick a little lunch, come out and pick a little supper, whatever, visit a lot. And then right past it is my chickens. So I can weed those gardens and throw the weeds right into the chickens.
Mhm.
Not put it in a wheelbarrow, throw the weeds in. Any extra produce, throw them in. And then this morning we did it. You can go into the chicken pen, and they're on deep bedding. So if people are going to have chickens on a in a static run in one place, please put deep bedding on there. So we got wood chips in there, but what happens is they scratch and manure, and that breaks that down, and eventually you got compost under there. So then you take the top layer, you just rake the top layer to the side, and you harvest this compost. We run it through a 1/2-inch wire mesh sifter on top of a wheelbarrow, and we've got compost. And what's happening there? The chickens have then, you put that compost on the garden, the chickens have fed the garden.
Right.
So the garden feeds the chicken, and the chickens feed the garden.
Right. And so, and you're talking about kind of like putting these things in close proximity to each other so that you're lessening your input, basically, right? You're
Yeah,
getting the higher
absolutely.
output, but lessening your input a little bit. So, what is kind of the basics of? I know that there's an idea of putting certain things closer to
Yeah.
the house and then certain other things farther, and so on and so forth. Is there kind of a standard to that design when it comes to permaculture? Like, what should go closest? What should go
Yeah.
farther away? Like, where do people start with that?
Yeah, permaculture will teach you about zoning,
Zoning,
and
right?
it's zoning 1 through 5. Zero is your house because you're living there most of the time, and then right outside, what are the areas you could see yourself visiting the most? And that would be zone 1. So then the things in zone 1, and why? Because think about this here. So how much would you visit a herb garden
Right.
where maybe you're going out to get some mint for your tea in the
Right.
morning. You want to have some mint tea. Go and grab some mint. Maybe for lunch, uh, you want to have. Today, I made the beautiful one. My wife some pico de gallo, so it's cilantro.
Right.
So I could go right outside and pick some cilantro. And for supper, we might have like a Greek um, lamb meal. So then you could go out there and pick some lettuce or something. So these things. So I would have visited that garden once, maybe 3 times in a day. So the idea is put those things that you're going to visit a lot close to the door in this zone 1 area.
Mhm.
And for us, we walk right outside our door, and zone 1 is right to the right. And that happens to be because if we also walk right, we walk down our sidewalk and down to our car.
Right.
So we just
You're just going in
tend to
that
be in
area.
that area more. It's
Right.
not any further, but if you go left, we actually end up putting a high tunnel greenhouse. That's zone 2 already. It's the same distance, but we've dedicated that to be zone 2 because we're not going to visit as much.
Right.
Sure, there'll be a time when we plant in that greenhouse, but we'll probably plant just crop garden crops, things that you just plant once, you weed once, you make sure it gets watered once a week, and then you weed and water it once a week, perhaps, and then harvest it. So not visiting that as much,
Mhm.
see? And then zone 3 are these farther off places that maybe that's a tended orchard. So maybe that's something that you're gonna tend to, I don't know, a few times a year. And then zone 4, we're getting way out there. My cows are in you kind of have to be okay with breaking some rules. My cows, even though we visit them once a day because we go out there and milk, that's kind of. Uh, I'm not going to put my cows in my front yard. I mean, you could put your cows in the front yard on deep bedding, uh, and bring in some hay. But generally, even though I visit the cows every day for the milking, they're going to need to be further out. They're going to be out there mowing, and then you keep going, and so then when somebody gives you a bare root tree, or there's this sale on bare root trees, and you want to plant these fruit trees, think about that. A lot of times we think, oh, we want to put it right close to the house, but maybe we shouldn't,
Mhm.
because how many times are you going to visit a fruit tree in a year?
Yeah.
handful, maybe 2 handfuls. How many times are you gonna visit your chickens? You're gonna let your chickens out in the morning, you're gonna put them up at night. That's 2 visits a day.
Right.
Put your chickens as close to your house as socially acceptable that your spouse approves.
Right.
If your spouse will let you put a couple of chickens in the dining room, do it.
I love that.
Put them in, put them on some deep bedding in a 4 by 4 foot box in the dining room. Put a couple of rabbits over them.
Right.
And if the neighbors will accept it and the HOA accept it and your spouse kicks them out of the house, get those rabbits and chickens out of the house, you crazy chicken lady. You shake
I love
those.
that you,
You,
I love that you use that example too, because we are on a quarter acre, so we're not on a whole bunch of land, and we have chickens and we have rabbits. Now, technically, we're not really supposed to have chickens here, but none of the neighbors mind. We're in an area where, like, out back, they got an acre,
yeah.
they have chickens. It's no big deal. But we have to keep them in the backyard, right? Because we're not technically supposed to have them. But our garden is in the front because that's where all the sun is and everything. So we've actually got them in the garden right now. I'm feeling really proud because I feel like this is a
Aw,
bit of a permaculture thing. My husband built a little chicken tractor the other day just to fit the pathways because we got like some major weed problems. We've kind of taken care of the
nice.
garden beds, but we need to take care of the pathways. And we're like, okay, this is stupid that we're putting in all this manpower trying to pull these weeds in before we put the cardboard down and everything because it's a mass out there. So we're like, let's just bring the chickens out. Nobody cares. So they're out there right now. We've been rotating them to different areas and seeing this kind of in action, right? Them eating the weeds, going at the bugs, taking care of the pests,
Yeah.
at fertilizing while they're out there, and then they're producing eggs for us as well,
Yeah.
right? So there's this
Yeah.
regenerative cycle, which is awesome. Now, I know that you have your chickens right beside your garden, that there is this idea of designing things within close proximity to one another. Now, for us, we can't really do that because of our zoning and everything, right? So my husband was actually saying, well, ask him if that's considered permaculture. Is it just about the design or is it also about these practices, right? Like we can't have our chickens right next to the garden. It's a little bit more work, but we can bring them out and we can introduce them to the garden and like is that okay if we have things in different zones that's still considered permaculture?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is permaculture. So you're still making a connection. You're still um, uh, uh, permaculture principles having the animals do the work of your farm. So you're still having your chickens do some of the work. That is permaculture. Now, listen, we permaculture serves us. We don't serve permaculture.
Mm.
So if you have to first of all, if you have to break a rule of permaculture, well, hopefully you have a even higher, grander ethos that you're abiding by, where permaculture is serving you, that the society is serving you. If you homeschool, we don't serve homeschooling. Homeschooling serves us. Hopefully you have some big, lofty visions that
Mhm.
only permaculture is only helping you get there. And
Right,
so if ever it doesn't, forsake that part or forsake it,
right.
because you have bigger, there's more to life.
Hmm.
But it's not breaking any of the rules of permaculture. And actually permaculture design will take in these kinds of considerations. I mean, I don't know if they'll do it in like textbook permaculture,
Right.
but permaculture has you consider what are your restrictions, like where is the sun. Maybe if the sun's over here on this side of your house on the southern hemisphere, maybe that's not where you have a winter garden. Maybe you don't put a winter garden behind your house
Hmm.
because your house is blocking the sun.
Hmm.
So they have those restrictions, like where do you have neighbors that maybe you want to block with a plant, a juniper plant or something? Where do you have flood zones? So where if you have high rain, and where are your flood zones? That's not a best place for the garden. That's a better place for grazing. So I don't see why you can't say in your designing,
Hmm.
uh, what are the HOA rules?
Hmm.
Okay, it might be that would it be super permaculture if you could have a rooster to breed your hens and you could hatch your own chicks? Yeah, sure, that would be super permaculture. But if the HOA says you cannot have a rooster
Hmm.
because roosters crow,
Hmm.
so that's a restriction. That
Hmm.
then you say, how do I work around that?
Right.
And then you say, oh well, chickens don't need a rooster to lay eggs. Okay, we can't breed. We
Hmm.
can't be this ultimate permaculture ninja master,
Hmm.
but we can do what we can within restrictions. And actually, permaculture will teach you to turn that problem into a solution. So you take problems and you turn it into solutions. So like what you're doing, you have problems with weeds. Well, you're taking those, they're no longer a problem anymore because now they're food
Hmm.
and they're something to do for your chickens. That
Hmm.
gives your chickens something to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
I
love
dare
that
you to,
because that idea of it working for you, because I think people can get really caught up in the textbook version of things or think, I don't have a big enough property to do that, or I, can't implement this part of it. So I can't do this. Right. And I am a big proponent of doing what you can where you are with what you got.
yeah,
So I like this idea of it, of you being able to kind of tailor it to suit your needs a little bit. Right.
yeah, yeah.
So another thing that I hear a lot of when in conversations about permaculture is this idea of a food forest. So can you explain a little
Mhm.
bit what is a food forest, how it works, and do you have one on your own property?
Right. No, I do not have a food forest. I want to almost say heck no, but I won't go that strong because there's nothing wrong with them.
Hmm.
Uh, People do get excited about certain things. Food forest is one of them in the permaculture world. They get excited about food forests, swells, but neither one of those are always appropriate in this situation. So it goes back to, maybe I don't do swells because in 2018 we got 80 inches of rain. On a normal year, we'll get 40 inches of rain. So our problem is getting water off, out of here, not
Right.
trying to retain it. Now, um, for the food forest, what is it? So that, in my mind, is edible plants together. You plant these taller trees that are going to be grow up really tall, but they're going to produce food. That might be a nut tree or something.
Hmm.
Okay. And then lower down and around it, you might have some other these might be fruit bearing trees. And then even lower on the shrub level,
Hmm.
something like blueberries or raspberries or wineberries. And then you could have vining stuff that runs up that stuff, and then even on the outer edges of that, like these bushes could be something like lettuces around the edge of that, or these low growing crops, strawberries.
Hmm.
um, so that would be a food forest.
Kind of like
I
companion planting 2.0.
Yep.
You're doing different
Companion
levels and
planting,
stuff. Yeah.
leveling up, so that's all it is.
Yeah.
And I don't do it because you go back to what do you want? Permaculture teaches us to grow. Bill Mollison would have us, want to know where to start, grow right outside your door.
Right.
Well, I say grow right outside the door of your heart. So grow what you want to eat. If you're not into nuts and fruits, maybe you're more animal based diet like me and you're almost a carnivore,
Hmm.
you're not going to be so interested in a food forest.
Right.
It's not going to be serving. You're not going to don't grow kale because it's cool.
Right.
Uh, Grow kale because you like it. Well, I haven't met too many people. If you really ask, do you really actually like kale? There's not too many people that raise your hand.
Yeah.
And then, do you actually like kale better than pork? Because you can actually feed kale to pigs
Right.
and they turn it into delicious
Right.
bacon and sausage. So then even more
So
hands
we end up
drop.
feeding a lot of it to our animals. I'm like, in turn, they're eating healthy, and we're getting
Yeah.
food out of
So
it.
I use permaculture in a different way, and like Salatin, I'm turning my forests into pastures and my pastures into my forests. So our orchard is going to be all over the farm.
Right.
A bit of nut free trees and fruit trees throughout the entire farm, not really close to each other.
Hmm.
Like the trees will not be like in this super efficient orchard style. They'll be more spread out. And guess what? Why is that better? Why is that more production? Because now on the same piece of land, we have fruit production or nut production, but the cows can rub up on the tree when
Hmm.
they come through. It can also be shade for them. And uh, fruit will drop, and behind the cows we run the sheep, and they will eat some of this fallen fruit, and then behind the sheep we run the chickens, and they will eat some of this fallen fruit, and the chickens will be scratching around and manure, and everybody's manuring around this tree. So the tree's giving shade. You see what's
Right.
happening here? The tree's giving shade, the tree's giving food, and then the animals are giving these trees fertilization and mowing. They're mowing
Right.
the grass around it.
Right. And so you have quite a few animals on your homestead. So can you talk a little bit about, well, first of all, what all are you raising, and why is livestock such an important part of a permaculture homestead?
We are the old McDonald farm, the EIEIO. So we grow 4 different kinds of poultry, chicken, and these are meat poultry. So I guess 5 if you want to count egg layers. So egg layer chickens, meat chickens, turkeys, geese, and ducks. They call me the Birdman. I guess that's where they got it. So then, uh, actually, nobody calls me the Birdman but myself. But isn't that fun? And then they then we have cows for milking, and then we offspring for beef. Then we have sheep, and we have pigs, and we're about to get rabbits this summer. Some rabbits to go with some of the chickens on a very small scale. So, why are animals important on the permaculture homestead? Because they can do so much. If permaculture is looking for elements that can work together, animals work really good with things. They mow the grass before the chickens come through. Chickens don't like tall grass. They fertilize, like I mentioned. Chickens, for example, will scratch and help you till a garden, help you de-weed. They eat bugs. So pigs are great garbage disposals. We're feeding they're 300-pound pigs on our skim milk. Every week we harvest our cream from our milk, and what are you going to do with that skim? We're going to feed it to the pigs. We give them our scraps. So there are garbage disposals. We basically give them no exterior input. They're 100% on our skim milk and grains. So back in the old days, when my grandpa was farming, that's what they did. I mean, if you had a dairy, you also had pigs.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if somebody doesn't eat animals, then you still might be interested in them, because chickens, even if you never harvest it, never eat its eggs, you could are great tillers, great debuggers, are great for entertainment, and great for decorating your landscape with. So it's hard to get a great fertilizer for your garden plants without animal.
But say somebody is on a property where for whatever reason they can't have animals, can they still create, a permaculture homestead, or can they still
For
implement
sure.
some of these permaculture practices and close a bit of the loop without having livestock?
Absolutely. So you don't have a livestock. Maybe that's one of your restrictions. Maybe you don't want it. Maybe that's not close to your heart.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, absolutely. So then you just look at the things that you want, and you say, you mentioned a food forest. So people could do the food forest, and that's permaculture, because your companion planting, so to speak. So your fruit trees and your blueberry bushes are working together. They're planted in proximity. They're helping keep down weeds for each other and that kind of stuff. So you got this diversity. And let's look at your garden. So permaculture looks at nature. How does nature work? So if you want to grow a garden, do you ever go out in nature and see bare ground? No. Mother Nature is terribly modest. She wants to cover herself. And if you don't cover her, somebody else, she will cover herself, and it's not going to be pretty there at first. She's going to throw up weeds. She's going to throw up these things that are going to create all kinds of things to actually cover that bare ground longer term. Ultimately, she's going to go into a forest or to a prairie. So you've got to look at that and say, oh, well, if I'm looking if I'm looking outside in the forest, there's really no weeds. What's the deal? Well, she covers herself. So it's a mulch, actually. So then you say, oh, well, what would I do if I'm going to do a garden and do like nature? Well, you could do like we do in our front yard, and we have our raised beds, and we planted our garden there, and we cut grass clippings, and we saved our grass clippings, and we put it around our plants. We grew up our plants, we transplanted them in there, and then we covered it with grass clippings, which is what nature does. She covers up the soil. And then those grass clippings end up holding in moisture. Grass clippings are great because I like them better than wood chips or anything else, because they add nitrogen, they break down faster, and they're keeping in moisture. They're suppressing the weeds. And so then you've used permaculture by just looking and saying, well, if only I'm going to plant, if only, oh, you could do this with permaculture. So you have nothing but a windowsill. You're in an apartment on the 7th floor in New York City. Well, if you get some sun in that windowsill, get you a terracotta pot or something like that, a 5-inch pot. Buy you some potting mix at the local gardening store, or have some shipped from Amazon. You could probably get it in 1 hour in New York City. Uh, Amazon now. And, order your little pot and your little potting soil and some basil seeds.
Mhm.
We'll put those basil seeds in there, and we're going to let them grow out. So, if you have some choices in that apartment, you could use permaculture and say, which window gives me the most sun? Because you observe and you see, and okay, window gives me the most sun. This window gives me the most sun. Okay, I'm going to put this basil in that. And then what else could I do? Well, what does nature do? She covers herself. So I'm going to let these basil seeds sprout. And nature is also very harsh. So maybe I'm going to plant 5 of these, and I'm going to take, nature will do this herself. She'll select the strong survive. Okay. So I've seen chickens take out other chickens because the strong survives. They're trying to strengthen their species. So they'll be ruthless sometimes. So you planted 5 seeds. 2 of them don't come up. You got 3. You pick your best one. You weed out the rest. And then what else does nature do? Nature covers it up. So find some leaves. Do shredded paper.
Right.
Run some paper through a shredder. And use it as mulch in that garden. And you've done permaculture. Permaculture doesn't have to be this epic homestead or polyface farm, market farm. It can be just observing nature and planting a basil plant in your windowsill.
I love that. I love that. Just kind of taking the elements that suit you and that serve you. So switching gears a little bit, you obviously have a very successful YouTube channel, got almost 1 million subscribers on there. You have made some kind of feature-length documentaries in your time, and you are putting out a ton of videos, right? I mean, I think you're doing multiple a week. So that obviously takes a lot of your time as well. And farming and homesteading and doing all this can take quite a bit of time too. So how much time are you spending filming and editing your videos every week? And how do you find time to fit in everything that you're doing?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's bust any myths out there. First, if you're going to homestead, you're going to have a job. I mean, unless you're going to be like an indigenous person, and you're not gonna spend any money. You're going to totally 100% live off the land. Otherwise, you're homesteading. You need to have a job. So I have a job, and it happens to be creating content around that job. So how many hours does that job take? I can probably office hours inside, whether it's editing or getting on calls like this and getting my name out there through the magazine or through podcasts or whatever, 20 hours a week. And hey, and then there's other time for, that's not counting like going out and working on the farm and maybe filming that and whatnot. So one good thing about this and being an entrepreneur and somebody who organizes their time, and you want to think, oh, you got to work 80 hours to be successful. No, actually, you might want to challenge yourself and say, oh, this week I'm only allowed to work 8 hours in the office. And what happens is, if you're smart, you'll have your goal. You'll know what you want. Just like in permaculture or homesteading, you'll have to figure out what you want. Okay. So you know what you want in your business. You have a goal. Well, then you write down your to-do list. And I'll do this sometimes. I'll write down my big goal on my daily to-do list. And I'll do it the night before. Forget the miracle morning if you're not a morning person. Forget it. Take that pressure off. Yeah. Do it in the evening if you're an evening person like I am. I'm depressed and woe is me the first half hour of the day. So that is not the time to be making a plan. So I make the plan the night before when I'm feeling good, dreaming, and go through that to-do list. And it may not be easy, but mark off some of the things that aren't going to get you to that goal, and then prioritize what you think is going to be the most powerful, efficient way to get to that goal. So for us, it's always putting out a YouTube video. Like, that is the number one priority, because that gets us the most success in the business. It grows our audience. It's a great place to pitch when we have a product for sale. It's the most effective. So that's what gets prioritized. Right. On that list is posting to Instagram and TikTok and all these things, but those don't always make the cut. Like in a really pressing day, the vlog always happens. Giving yourself those restrictions it makes you think, it makes you prioritize, and it's what's called the 80-20 rule.
Hmm.
You will accomplish 80% of your goals in the 20% of the effort if you're picking the right and the most effective things.
The number one thing I always hear from people is like, I don't have time. I wish I could do this. I don't have time. Right.
Yeah.
And so I love that idea of just really choosing and narrowing down. And because especially when people are starting, I find that they do want to do everything. Right. Well, how am I going
Yep.
to do this? And I work a job and everything. And it's almost more about eliminating, right? What do you
Oh, yeah.
not need to be doing and just focus on those things and grow from
Yeah.
there. All right. So a couple more things just quickly. So you do your YouTube. You've done some feature-length documentaries. You've also got a docu-series you're working on, right?
Yeah.
Called Rooted, as well as your website, Abundant Permaculture. And you got a membership site, you got an online course, you got all these things, as we said. So what has been your favorite project so far? And what are you working on or planning right now that's got you fired up?
Yeah, I'm very excited about Rooted, our TV show.
Mhm.
So I'm excited about that because it's it's shown me and hopefully shows the world that anybody can post to YouTube, but also, I mean, it's coming to the point where we live in a time where anybody can produce their own TV show. YouTube took away this idea that you have to have a network pick you up to get any attention. No, you can post to YouTube and gain a following. Anybody could do it with consistency, creativity, trying to get better. Anybody can do it. Take it up a notch is if I can become a producer for my own show. Well, couldn't I do that for other shows? And that is maybe where the future is going. But then also, can't we be our own network? Like entertainment is going away from cable TV. You
Mhm.
don't even need. Okay, it was not cool 10 years ago, or probably 10, 15 years ago, when Rebecca and I got rid of the TV, got rid of that distraction. Like that was the only way to get things. And it was not cool. Like we had to adjust. We had to read, listen to the radio. But now if you get rid of the cable TV, so what?
Yeah.
You get a Roku, you get Apple TV, just something with the internet, and you can watch Netflix, HBO Plus, whatever it's called, Disney Plus. So you get something for the kids with Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, ESPN.
Right.
They're all on these streaming networks, so that's the future. So I'm like, well, what can we do for homesteading? So I came up with Abundance Plus. And so hopefully this will be a network that bundles all this homestead permaculture into one, family friendly. A lot of homesteaders are family friendly, and their kids can watch stuff on YouTube, but who knows what YouTube is going to suggest next? Who
Mhm.
knows what kind of ad is going to come on before my videos?
Right.
And so this Abundance Plus is something where people are getting rid of their $100, $150 cable plan, and they're replacing it with Netflix, Discovery, Disney, ESPN, and hopefully Abundance Plus.
Right. Okay. Well, perfect. So that kind of wraps it up. Things. My last question is, where can people find you online and learn more?
Free stuff at thejustinrhodesshow.com, which is our YouTube channel.
Right.
And then the Abundance Plus, which is if they want my YouTube stuff without ads,
Mhm.
and if they want our future our shows that we've already produced and those in the future, and any other shows we pick up and any other documentaries we pick up.
Perfect. That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time to chat with
Yep.
me today.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Justin. Have a great
All
day.
right. You too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.